Okay, so picture this. What if your job was a marriage? You commit to one company for your entire life, and in return, they take care of you, kind of like family. Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, for decades, that was the reality in Japan. But here's the twist. A whole new generation is basically filing for divorce. Today, we are going to dive right into the dramatic, and I mean dramatic, collapse of Japan's lifetime employment system.
So I've got to ask you, would you marry your company? I know, it sounds like a totally bizarre question, but seriously, for decades in Japan, that was basically the deal. There's even a special word for it, shusha, and it means you don't just get a job, you enter a company for life. The whole idea was that this was a permanent, rock-solid commitment. So, how on earth did this corporate marriage even work? Well, it was all built on these two really powerful promises. And these promises, they helped fuel Japan's incredible economic miracle after the war. Let's break down the first part of the deal.
All right, so pillar number one was lifetime employment. Just try to imagine this for a second. You get hired right out of university, and, with almost total certainty that you have a job at that company until the day you retire. In a world that's always so uncertain, can you even imagine that level of security? It was the ultimate price.
And the second pillar, that was the seniority system. Get this, your pay and your promotions, they weren't really based on how well you did your job. Nope, they were based on how long you'd been there. The longer you stayed, the higher you climbed that ladder. It was this crystal clear promise. Just be loyal, be patient, and you will be rewarded. Guaranteed.
So you can see the deal, right? It was basically a social contract. You, the employee, gave the company your absolute, unwavering loyalty. We're talking accepting sudden transfers to another city, working crazy long hours, all without question. And in return, the company became your second family. They'd help you with housing, celebrate your wedding. They gave you total, absolute security for life. That was the trade-off.
But, a promise like that level of security, it came at a really steep price. There was a dark side to this system, and it created these intense pressures that would eventually cause some serious cracks to form.
One of the most striking symbols of this whole system is this scene that plays out every single spring in Japan. Picture hundreds of thousands of university students, all dressed in identical black suits, all interviewing for jobs at the exact same time. It's this massive, coordinated recruitment ritual. There's nothing else like it in the world.
So why did all these companies hire this way? Well, they weren't really looking for specific skills or expertise. What they wanted were blank canvases, young graduates they could mold from scratch and train in the company way. In this kind of system, fitting in and maintaining harmony, or kyocho-sei, was way more valuable than your individual talent.
Now, you can probably guess the downside to being molded like this by your company. It was often a total loss of self. And this led to a really dark, kind of self-deprecating term, shakuchiku. It literally translates to corporate livestock. It's such a powerful word people use to describe that feeling of being owned by their company, with almost no personal freedom.
And this pressure, it took a devastating toll. The culture of extreme overtime led to a truly tragic social problem, and a new word was needed to describe it, karoshi, which means death from overwork. This became so widespread and so serious that the word karoshi is now recognized globally. It's actually even in English dictionaries. Think about that.
And here it is, the final crack in the system. With a slowing economy and fierce global competition, even Japan's top corporate leaders are now admitting it out loud. The old promise is broken. They're basically saying, we can no longer maintain lifetime employment. They just can't guarantee a job for life anymore.
So, with that old deal completely off the table, a new generation is stepping up and writing their own rules. Now, this isn't some loud protest in the streets. It's a quiet but massive rebellion against that old way of working.
You can just see how much the values have totally shifted. Where the older generation prized company loyalty above all else, Gen Z, they're focused on their personal market value, on building their own skills. The goal isn't stability for life anymore. It's about having a healthy work-life balance. And the whole idea of job hopping, well, it's being completely redefined.
Yeah, for their parents' generation, leaving a company was seen as a failure, maybe even a betrayal. But for young professionals today, tenshoku, or job hopping, is a smart, strategic move. It's how you gain new skills, how you increase your salary, and how you build a career on your own terms. It's not a failure, it's a career upgrade.
Okay, so that's the story of this huge cultural shift in Japan. But what does all of this mean for you? Let's dig into some of the big questions this raises about work itself, starting with a few key ideas we've covered.
So we've talked about these traditional ideas like lifetime employment and the seniority system and that absolute loyalty. And we've also seen the rise of these newer concepts like strategic job hopping by new graduates or shinsutsu. Now, let's think about how these ideas might apply to our own careers.
Let's start with the big one, the fundamental trade-off, stability versus freedom. In your own career, which one do you value more? Would you rather have the security of one job for life or the freedom to kind of forge your own path?
Okay, next question. How do companies hire where you live? Is it more like that traditional Japanese model of hiring for potential, the blank canvas idea? Or is it almost entirely based on the skills you already bring to the table? How do young people get their first big break?
And finally, let's circle back to that big idea from the beginning, a company as a second family. When you hear that, how does it make you feel? Is that idea comforting, like being part of a supportive community? Or, honestly, does it just sound completely suffocating?
The contract between companies and employees is being rewritten everywhere, not just in Japan. These questions don't have easy answers, that's for sure. But they are the exact questions shaping the future of work for every single one of us. Great conversations start with great questions. So now it's your turn to talk.